Yeah, yeah. Check. One. Mic. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, yeah. Check. One, two. Check. One. Yeah.
today, we are making a brighter tomorrow, built by our dreams and our energy. Across our continent, across the world, we are creating a better way to a better future. A Pan-African future. Together. Ecobank. A better way, a better Africa. Across Africa, a new era has begun. Shifting our focus to a new horizon, connecting us with one purpose.
Curator for the Ecobank Design and Build exhibition taking place at the Pan-African Center on Ozumbamba Way. It is my pleasure to invite you to this year's exhibition. I'm immensely glad that Ecobank is taking on this initiative to show the world how we build, how we design, and ultimately how we use spaces. This year's theme is how we build, how we live, showing the circular nature of how what we build determines how we live in those spaces, and how also the way the Ecobank Design and Build exhibition taking place at the Pan-African Center on Ozumbamba Way. It is my pleasure to invite you to this year's exhibition. I'm immensely glad that Ecobank is taking on this initiative to show the world how we build, how we design, and ultimately how we use spaces. This year's theme is how we build, how we live, showing the circular nature of how what we build determines how we live in those spaces, and how also the way we live should inform how we build as Nigerians, as Africans, and as humans in general. So join us from the 24th to the 28th of September 2025 to see how we build, how we live, and how lifestyle impacts design and vice versa. This year, we're putting people at the center of the conversation. How do we use space? Why do we design the way we do? What are the things we do in space? And what do we want the built environment to do for us? So join us this year to find out how we build and how we live. I look forward to seeing you there. Hello, my name is Titi Fora. I'm the creative director of Inu Design, and I'm also the curator for the Ecobank Design and Build exhibition taking place at the Pan-African Center on Ozumbamba Way. It is my pleasure to invite you to this year's exhibition. I'm immensely glad that Ecobank is taking on this initiative to show the world how we build, how we design, and ultimately how we use spaces. This year's theme is how we build, how we live, showing the circular nature of how what we build determines how we live in those spaces, and how also the way we live should inform how we build as Nigerians, as Africans, and as humans in general. So join us from the 24th to the 28th of September 2025 to see how we build, how we live, and how lifestyle impacts design and vice versa. This year, we're putting people at the center of the conversation. How do we use space? Why do we design the way we do? What are the things we do in space? And what do we want the built environment to do for us? So join us this year to find out how we build and how we live. I look forward to seeing you there. Hello, my name is Titi Fora. I'm the creative director of Inu Design. I'm also the curator for the Ecobank Design and Build exhibition taking place.
Every great idea begins with a vision. From bold architectural plans that hold our aspirations to laying the very foundations of progress. Because where we live shapes how we live, and how we live shapes who we become. It's never just about walls and roofs. It's about the lives unfolding within them, the offices where careers are created, the homes where stories are written, the kitchens that gather the warmth of Sunday afternoons, the living rooms filled with laughter, love, and legacy. This year, we look beyond bricks and mortar to the harmony between thoughtful design and the rhythms of everyday life. From curated interiors to local innovation, we celebrate the ways space and culture inspire one another. At Ecobank, we know that building a nation means building with heart and purpose, championing the architects, the artisans, and the everyday dreamers who bring visions to life and create places that feel like home, places where we belong. Because when we build together, we live better, our buildings, our communities, our nation. Ecobank Design and Build Exhibition. How we build, how we live. Every great idea begins with a vision. From bold architectural plans that hold our aspirations to laying the very foundations of progress. Because where we live shapes how we live, and how we live shapes who we become. It's never just about walls and roofs. It's about the lives unfolding within them, the offices where careers are created, the homes where stories are written, the kitchens that gather the warmth of Sunday afternoons, the living rooms filled with laughter, love, and legacy. This year, we look beyond bricks and mortar to the harmony between thoughtful design and the rhythms of everyday life. From curated interiors to local innovation, we celebrate the ways space and culture inspire one another. At Ecobank, we know that building a nation means building with heart and purpose, championing the architects, the artisans, and the everyday dreamers who bring visions to life and create places that feel like home, places where we belong. Because when we build together, we live better, our buildings, our communities, our nation. Ecobank Design and Build Exhibition. How we build, how we live. Every great idea begins with a vision. From bold architectural plans that hold our aspirations to laying the very foundations of progress. Because where we live shapes how we live, and how we live shapes who we become. It's never just about walls and roofs. It's about the lives unfolding within them, the offices where careers are created, the homes where stories are written, the kitchens that gather the warmth of Sunday afternoons, the living rooms filled with laughter, love, and legacy. This year, we look beyond bricks and mortar to the harmony between thoughtful design and the rhythms of everyday life. From curated interiors to local innovation, we celebrate the ways space and culture inspire one another. At Ecobank, we know that building a nation means building with heart and purpose, championing the architects, the artisans, and the everyday dreamers who bring visions to life and create places that feel like home, places where we belong. Because when we build together, we live better, our buildings, our communities, our nation. Ecobank Design and Build Exhibition. How we build, how we live. Every great idea begins with a vision. From bold architectural plans that hold our aspirations to laying the very foundations of progress. Because where we live shapes how we live, and how we live shapes who we become. It's never just about walls and roofs. It's about the lives unfolding within them, the offices where careers are created, the homes where stories are written, the kitchens that gather the warmth of Sunday afternoons, the living rooms filled with laughter, legacy. This year, we look beyond bricks and mortar to the harmony between thoughtful design and the rhythms of everyday life. From curated interiors to local innovation, we celebrate the ways space and culture inspire one another. At Ecobank, we know that building a nation means building with heart and purpose, championing the architects, the artisans, and the everyday dreamers who bring visions to life and create places that feel like home, places where we belong. Because when we build together, we live better, our buildings, our communities, our nation. Ecobank Design and Build Exhibition. How we build, how we live. Every great idea begins with a vision. From bold architectural plans that hold our aspirations to laying the very foundations of progress. Because where we live shapes how we live, and how we live shapes who we become. It's never just about walls and roofs. It's about the lives unfolding within them, the offices where careers are created, the homes where stories are written, the kitchens that gather the warmth of Sunday afternoons, the living rooms filled with laughter, love, and legacy. This year, we look beyond bricks and mortar to the harmony between thoughtful design and the rhythms of everyday life. From curated interiors to local innovation, we celebrate the ways space and culture inspire one another. At Ecobank, we know that building a nation means building with heart and purpose, championing the architects, the artisans, and the everyday dreamers who bring visions to life, and create places that feel like home, places where we belong. Because when we build together, we live better. Our buildings, our communities, our nation. Ecobank Design and Build Exhibition. How we build, how we live. Every great idea begins with a vision. From bold architectural plans that hold our aspirations to laying the very foundations of progress. Because where we live shapes how we live, and how we live shapes who we become. It's never just about walls and roofs. It's about the lives unfolding within them, the offices where careers are created, the homes where stories are written, the kitchens that gather the warmth of Sunday afternoons, the living rooms filled with laughter, love, and legacy. This year, we look beyond bricks and mortar to the harmony between thoughtful design and the rhythms of everyday life. From curated interiors to local innovation, we celebrate the ways space and culture inspire one another. At Ecobank, we know that building a nation means building with heart and purpose, championing the architects, the artisans, and the everyday dreamers who bring visions to life, and create places that feel like home, places where we belong. Because when we build together, we live better. Our buildings, our communities, our nation. Ecobank Design and Build Exhibition. How we build, how we live.
To create and share opportunities to grow. Today, we are making a brighter tomorrow, built by our dreams and our energy. Across our continent, across the world, we are creating a better way to a better future. A Pan-African future, together. Ecobank, a better way, a better Africa. Across Africa, a new era has begun, shifting our focus to a new horizon, connecting us with one purpose: to create and share opportunities to grow. Today, we are making a brighter tomorrow, built by our dreams and our energy. Across our continent, across the world, we are creating a better way.
Today promises to be even better. I can assure you that just walking into the space, you see the intentionality of all the boats and how beautiful they look. Now you can imagine even how intentional we have been with selecting the people that are coming to speak and share knowledge with us today, and even all the other days. So please, in this class, in this session, I want you to pay a lot of attention. There's so much to take away, there's so much to learn. And if you have questions, of course, please do not be shy. Make sure you ask all the questions you want to ask. I promise you that our speaker is more than able to answer all your questions. I will be introducing a very, very special speaker. My name is Jumoke Pinero. Very proud to be a member of this amazing institution, putting all of this together, Ecobank Nigeria. Please, a round of applause for my organization. Yes, thank you very much. Honestly, I expected that applause to be louder. You know, I've gone around this space. I'm just like, yeah, I don't think there's anyone that does it this well. It's just so good, so intentional, and it's for 5 days. Not so many people can do this. Now, let's move very quickly to our speaker for today. Um, as you may know, the theme of this year's Ecobank Design and Build is how we build and how we live. If you think about it properly, you know, it's very important because at the end of the day, everything we do, how we build, whatever it is, our office space, our homes, name it, is so important. It affects how we live. And that's what I said. The intentionality in picking everything out for this event is just so evident. Now, our speaker today is speaking on designing the future. You know, as we all know, it's something we have to think about. It's something that we have to critically think about. And that's why I'm very pleased to introduce to you. He's a senior special principal and co-executive director overseeing the Africa Studio. He also founded the African Design Center, a field-based training program within MAS supporting designers to leapfrog past the mistakes of unsustainable industrialization so that Africa can become a global leader in equitable regenerative development. Even from this short patch, you can already tell he's always thinking of the future. He was also recognized as a Court Africa innovator and has been named among 10 architects and designers who are championing Afrofuturism. You know, typically when you hear top 100, top 50, this particular speaker has been named among 10 architects. I think he deserves a round of applause. Yes. He also has a TED Talk that has garnered over 1 million views to date. It's not a music video. It's not a comedy show. It's not something that people would typically want to sit down for, you know, that long, but he has over 1 million views. Before I call his name, just another round of applause, please. Thank you very much. Now, if you're wondering who I'm speaking about, it is the one, the only, Christian Benny Mana. Please, a round of applause for him. Guess what? I didn't know he was standing there all the while. Thank you so much. Good morning. Yes, like I said, please listen very attentively. Have all your questions. I assure you, he would answer them even more than you think he can. So please enjoy this session.
Let me put this down here. Good morning. I'm waiting for the clicker so I can control the slides. Thank you, sir. All right. Where do I point? Great. Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here. I had prepared a very inspiring speech until this morning when they made me walk through the exhibition and gallery and explain the concept. And I was sitting in the back room. I said, I'm going to change all of that. I'm going to throw away the speech I prepared of being inspirational and all sort of things. And I'm going to invite us to challenge a little bit our beliefs and things we do and how we do them. So this talk is going to be a little bit disrespectful to everybody. So bear with me. Full disclosure, it's not out of pure disrespect. It's about inviting a little bit of introspective and self-criticism to see how we can do better. So out of the bat, I'll go ahead and start by disrespecting ourselves. We're going to use these examples in good faith. They made ice cream in the desert a long time ago with a very simple system. They will collect water in the desert because they know at night it gets very cold. It drops below freezing temperatures for water. The shallow pool will create ice, which will then be placed in the chamber and food is placed at different levels of the structure depending on the expected level of their preservation temperature. At the bottom, it was so cold that they could make ice cream in the desert. So this idea about how we do things now, if you compare to the ingenuity that existed before, we're not pulling our own weight, and we have to figure out how to increase that. So this simple example, and there are thousands and thousands all over the world, including in Africa, about how we use to build actually to the degree of how we lived at that time. But what have we done now? We have substituted some of those solutions that were inspired by nature by solutions that seem to be going against nature. So we're starting to disrespect engineers here. If any is in the room, we apologize in advance, right? And we're not doing that only in the solutions we seek or what we want to achieve, but it's also about the components we're using to fabricate that. On the left, all the materials that were used to make that natural fridge was from nature and was little processed. On the right, these systems, these components are hugely processed, and the supply chain that makes them equally hugely problematic. And then we've expanded that to larger scales, to our cities. We turn our natural environments into these concrete jungles that we are now very proud of to showcase on our Instagrams and Facebook when we take trips, because now they are a symbol of prosperity for countries. And a lot of things that we use every day, our phones, everything else, is based on these extractive processes that are very difficult and are going against nature in many ways. In simple terms, we have worked so hard to create this conflict between human and nature. I want to go back to the previous slide. Oh, this keeps going. I don't know why. I don't know why it's skipping through my slides. This one, yeah. This is an image. It's a real image. It's not AI, I promise you. It's an image of Rwanda in the north, near the Virunga National Park. The line you see has a time in history. It's a time where the government put a policy that people cannot encroach on the Virunga National Park anymore. That's the date. That line stopped progressing towards the right of the screen. So essentially, over I don't know how many years, probably since before I was born, all the ingenuity we've created, especially here in Africa, has made us to come to this point, where we understand nature to stand on one side and us doing things on our own side. And this cannot continue. At least you have to agree on that. We have to figure out how to not only reverse this, but also prevent it from happening in the future again. And I'll come back to that later in the talk. One of the reasons why we do that, and I'm going to talk now specifically about Africa, is because this idea of what wildlife represents, the opposite of modernity, is not true. I'm going to go on Olympia and do a little bit of disrespect to my country. In Rwanda, biodiversity and nature is usually represented by gorillas. Do you guys know that? We are very proud of our mountain gorillas. But today I'm going to use the different protagonists for my talk. I'm going to use a gray-crowned crane. It's a beautiful bird, right? And by the look in his eyes, it looks like it's really tired of our shenanigans, humans. The reason why this bird is important is because for the natural ecosystem of the country, Rwanda where I come from, it's a symbol of a balanced ecosystem. It perches on acacia trees, which are native trees of that land, and it's a symbol of healthy wetlands. When wetlands are healthy, gray crown cranes thrive. When they are not healthy, the gray crown cranes, they leave. So for us, it's a symbol of, sorry, I don't think, so this is the acacia tree that I was talking about, that you see, and then this is the gray crown cranes using the wetlands only when they're healthy. These birds are they're very bougie. They don't like unhealthy ecosystems. Oops. I apologize, guys. I don't know how to control these slides. I don't know what's happening. So, this is the papyrus, which is also an indicator of healthy wetlands and water bodies. So together with the gray crane crowns, they show whether our natural ecosystem are in perfect balance or they are not. So when you don't see any of them, you know there's a big problem. Okay, so why is that important for Rwanda? That's the example I'm going to use because I don't know much about Nigeria. I hope in the future I'll be able to understand. It's because right now, Rwanda is the most densely populated nation on mainland Africa. We're about 590 plus people per square kilometer. Small country, very populous. And that population is going to increase, double by 2050. But the land borders are not increasing. So we have a lot of problems. The good thing is, if we can solve them for Rwanda, we can solve them for Africa, because Africa also is on the same trend. Nigeria, as the most populous country and growing on the continent, included. So you guys have to pray that we find solutions to these problems before they become your problems. One of the main problems is agriculture and food productivity. How do we feed all these people when land is not increasing and natural ecosystems are being depleted? This is an image of what land distribution was in early 90s. And this is what it had become 30 years later, where farmland has surpassed all the other natural ecosystems. Clearly, this is not sustainable, because otherwise we'll just live in farms. At some point, we'll surpass the production capacity of the land. Doing that also comes with a number of issues, because it's impractical farming that does not regenerate food or regenerate the soil, and therefore that practice leads to other problems like malaria prevalence in the country. You'll see on this map that the increase in the prevalence of malaria is in line with how farmland has changed. You can see the southeast part where farmland has transformed most from natural grassland to farmland is also malaria prevalence increased sharply. So it's in that context that we worked on this project that I'm going to use as an example, and then I'll come back to disrespecting each segment of our population and professionals. This is Rwanda, and the project I'm going to talk about is an agriculture campus that was trying to figure out conservation agriculture in a basin that Rwanda occupies, but projects beyond the borders of Rwanda. So all that topography that you see that is not in the black, that's the similar conditions of the rains and soils and everything else. That means if Rika, which is in the south of Rwanda there on that dot, can figure that out, those are the practices that we can spread all over this other basin with the same condition. These are our early community engagements that we did when we're talking to people around it, try to understand what the existing practices are. That's my colleague Noella trying to explain what our ambitions were, but also like understand and learn from people that live there and what we're trying to do. The land had already seen practices of exploration in agriculture with the Rwanda Agriculture Board, which we engaged very intimately. We spoke to experts in their field to try to understand how agriculture is in the country and what conservation agriculture represents. And then we started thinking about the curriculum. What does it mean to create this balance between human activity, animals, and ecological health? So that One Health principle that we used in this project is based on this balance and these principles. Oh my God. Over the development of the country, since independence or slightly before independence up to now, the right, on my right or your left, was the standard practice, where there was assumed, I don't know what's happening. Yeah, where it was assumed that we will design and build cities based on the occupation of the hills. Rwanda is the country of 1,000 hills, so everywhere it's sloped. The top will be administrative or economic hubs and everything else. Then slightly downhill there will be residentials, and then further down will be conserved areas or small industry. But it's very problematic because on the left, you see what the balanced ecosystem is supposed to look like to support the One Health concept that we talk about. So the idea for this project was to go from what's on the right, the status quo, to the left, what will actually bring about the balance. And pose that having a robust natural ecosystem is actually good for agriculture productivity. Similar to the first examples I used about architecture and construction, agriculture also has been done before. Agriculture experts were formed and trained. So how do we go back to understanding what nature can do, but also like pair that with expertise to produce what we want to do? Recognizing the role of the members of this diverse ecosystem in this ambition. This is what the site looked like. These are some of the ideas that we were trying to juxtapose all these systems on the site in the beginning. And in the end, we imagined the campus that will function on many theories and principles around One Health, where human life is organized in ways that is intertwined with agriculture produces, but also nature is prioritized, where water systems and water management is thought, and enterprise is woven between all of that. First-year students is imitating farmlands that are typical in Rwanda, about 0.7 hectares, that spans from the top of the hill all the way to the bottom. So first-year students will have to live in the farm and learn how to make this small land productive in agriculture and animal production before they move to second year. And of course, thinking about all the natural ways to balance heat again and heat prevention, water collection from the rain, basically have everything that they need to survive within that acre. This is what first housing looked like. And then when they move through the section of their farm, they have all the way to the top of the hill conserved areas that they don't make as agriculture productive as possible, but it's more nature-based. And the waterways at the bottom, which is also like natural corridors, and the land they have to make productive is in between. This is not going. You can see the strips of the farms, where when you get to the enterprises, you also have enterprises coming through into the farmland, but also like linking back to the top of the hill, but then also like segmenting the entire corridors between natural ecosystems and human activity use spaces. Waterways. This site is located between two lakes, which means we had to be very diligent about how we manage stormwater and wastewater, how we treat it before we send it back into the waterways. Next. All right, enterprises, this is where the transformation in adding value to the crops that comes from the land is supposed to take place. So they're placed in ways that they cut through so that also like human activity can take at very specific intervals. So if people are working in the farms, some other people can be working in making yogurt with the milk, but those people, even though they are connected, but they're also being able to isolate themselves, especially in cases where there is such a need. When we're doing this project, it was during COVID, so it became important for us to understand that sometimes close contact can also be fatal. So how do you build productivity in ways that is integrated, but also have the ability to isolate when it's necessary? This is what the enterprises look like. They needed big spaces to, standard factory type of spaces and spans, creating like clear stories and like mimicking like the slopes of the hills and everything else was an architectural ambition for us in creating the forms, but also ended up like working really well for the size and spaces that we needed. This is an example of the dairy processes and how it looks like from the farm of the goats to milk processing, collecting and processing. This is vegetable, fruit and crops. So if you think about making strawberry jam and all the way back to like cultivating strawberries in the field, that would be what the process could look like. RICA has now graduated 4 cohorts of students to date. The last one was, I think, 2 weeks ago. And we follow their progress to see how all this space that we've designed is actually working towards them achieving their goals. Now we're going to talk about I'm going to talk about another thing we did very intentionally, the celebration of food. Because at the base of this whole process, or this whole effort was to make sure we understand how to create better food chains and better food processes. But at the end of it, it's also about respecting that what we get from the land, what we get from this natural ecosystem to sustain us as people should not be taken for granted. We need to be respectful of that. So this area that looks like cathedral-like with big spaces and above was intentionally designed as the cafeteria of the campus. So when you come through from the top of the hill all the way down, you end up in this place that opens up to the lake. That's where everybody eats, because we wanted to make it this celebratory moment that all the efforts and process and steps it took to get the food from the field to your table is not to be taken for granted. And I think there are many conversations around the world about how we need to be more respectful to our farmers that feed us. That's the entrance to the main building campus. That's sitting at the cafeteria at the bottom of it. And this is the solar array that produces 1.5 megawatts of electricity that the entire campus needs. So it's totally off-grid. They only use the grid power as backup. Of course, it was designed after understanding like electricity needs throughout the day, but also like throughout the year, depending on like, home use or food processing use or machinery use, etc., etc. These are some of the students celebrating. The top left corner, the bottom left corner photo is an experiment of an electric tractor in the field because part of trying to do less harm to the environment, we also want to lean more on electric vehicles for not only transportation, but also like food productivity. That's what the campus looked like, I think 4 years ago when it ended. And now I'm going to talk about construction. So a little bit of disrespect to the builders and many of the exhibitors that are in the exhibition hall today. Not because they don't have good products, but because when we did this project, we tried to move away from industrial manufactured elements as much as we could, because we're trying to imagine how, if the organization we are working with is investing in conservation agriculture, we need to mirror that effort with conservation architecture. And that was the question. What would it take to mirror the effort that they're trying to do on the other side? And this summarizes our ambition. How can we build the architecture off of the byproducts of the land and agriculture as much as we could? It's not that because we can be very radical, but how many aspects of this can we actually achieve? And that's what I'm going to talk about very briefly and very quickly. So 98% of RICA's labor was sourced within 1,000 miles of the sites. I don't know what that is in kilometers, but you can imagine it's not a very large area. And 96% of the materials by weight were sourced within the country. These are not goals we set, but these were the results of design decisions we made when we were designing the campus. It has gone to the first slide again. So, what happened was that when we were imagining what this campus would be built with, we didn't imagine just some of these goals of having buildings finished so they can occupy them. But you understand, we wanted to understand like how culture and craft and materials and everything else can fit within this campus. And that's what led us to these two goals, the two outcomes that I just mentioned. So earth construction, which we used. Why did we use it? Because majority of construction in Rwanda is still made with earth. It's not in the city, in the cities of the country, but it's still made with earth. But beyond that, majority of people that make those buildings are not formally trained masons, but they still build them. So our understanding of this material was that if we can figure out with our fancy degrees how to build with it well, then we can give it a chance to actually be a material of choice for most of the people to build in the country. This is Adobe blocks. I'm sure in Nigeria you're familiar with this material. But we wanted to understand if we could improve on this, because it has limitations, the way it's currently made with mud and straw. And there are examples of rammed earth, compressed stabilized earth blocks, and we experimented with all of them to try to see which ones will serve us better. This is RICA's rammed earth walls rooms that are not painted, but only sealed after they've been compressed. But to get there, we had to do probably what is the most extensive earth and land studies of the site in the country, because we had the project. We went around to look for sites where we'll get the best earth, not very far from the site. We tested all types of soils and additives and materials to see which one will give us the best results to use. But we also had to balance, because Rwanda sits within a highly seismic zone. So all of these materials have limitations of what they can and can't do. And therefore we had to go through our plans and find a system that will balance where we'll need reinforced concrete but also where we can use the earth, because life is about seeking the perfect balance. But we also challenged some of the assumptions. We pushed ourselves. Where we needed reinforced concrete, we also asked if we really needed it, or if there could be other interventions we could do that will solve the problems without using materials. So for instance, the foundations were used by stone foundations. Romans and everybody else that had built civilization, Egyptians have built with stones for centuries, right? So it's easy for us to design concrete rough foundations for these houses and buildings, but we can also change it back to stone, provided that we give a plinth that is small and it's reinforced concrete and helps us achieve the same result we wanted to have anyways. We could paint or protect the external walls, but we could also extend the roof so that it's protected from incoming rains. Like, these are design decisions that we made so that we can reduce the unnecessary amount of pollutant materials that we could have in this campus, because they did not fit within the parameters we're working with. Testing, add mixtures. How much amount of cement can we add in? Or can we use lime? Do we even have lime in the country, or do we have to import it? Funny enough, after this test, we found that using cement found in the country was more effective than getting lime, because the good quality lime was coming in from Tanzania. It's nearby, but the process was more polluting than actually using the cement in the quantities that we needed it at the time in stabilizing our materials. We looked at best practices. In Rwanda, we didn't have a lot of literature around building with earth, but there are other countries that have done it. So this is also like the idea that in Africa we have so many problems, but we also can look out there and see who has done other things and better and borrow it. Like, there's nothing that stops us from stealing it and use it to our advantage if it is helping us. So this is the New Zealand code for building with earth that we used, but we used that as a base to develop our own specifications. We wrote all of this specification with building with earth so that contractors know what to do. These again, like, referenced materials. We brought in people that have done it before to teach us and teach other people that will do it. This group came from Australia and worked with our masons in Rwanda, who went on to create their own companies. Ran a bunch of tests, further tests around, systems we're producing. And also we wanted to, in addition of lab tests, we also wanted to come up with a system of tests that can be done on site by everybody. Because remember, the goal is to figure out how to democratize this so that other people can also use it. Like a test, for instance, of like holding the mud in your hand and see how much stays on your hand, like, can be a good indicator of whether the mixture you have is going to be good or not. Block tests, some of them we didn't really have much time to understand, but we had to project in the future. So this is a water erosion test. It's really what it looks like. It's very simple. It's a cup with a hole in the bottom. We just pour water on it, and then it goes onto the brick for some time until we see which one become better or not. Anyways, simple test like dropping a brick. Take it from like a slight distance and like let it go. Depending on how it breaks, it can show you whether that brick was well made or it's ready to use or not, and documenting all of that. Yeah, water repellent tests, or also like repair tests. So like the one at the bottom is like, when people want to hang artwork on these walls and they put nails in it and they remove them, how's that going to work, etc., things like that. So this is about understanding which system works best for us in terms of reducing embodied carbon. Mostly that comes from cement, and also like have a healthy balance between what's structural, sound, and what not. I don't know what this slide is. setting up the processes that will have us create all of these bricks for the entire campus, mechanical machines. We could use factory machines, but again, they run on diesel, so we wanted to try to see how we could minimize that. Plus, we have many young people that were not employed, that this job for them for a span of 2 years, rebuilding the campus would be life-changing. So that was our on-site factory for the bricks. Tests for the rammed earth. We made tests on the form work and everything before we started building. Understanding the aging and the cracks that comes in as the building sets in, and how to address that when we build the houses. Plastering inside the house, like how do we protect the walls, but also like create smooth surfaces. Also earth-based, as much as we could. Testing different samples, see how they age before we finish the buildings. And these are some of the photos of the finished product. EPDs, Environmental Product Declaration. Many products that come off the factories come with this. The problem is they don't have materials like earth that we just mentioned, that we're working with in Africa. So we had to create our own. And this would be like our earth supply chain. We literally had people go at the quarry where we're getting the earth and sit there and monitor how much the diesel truck has been sitting idle and calculating so that we can understand how much embodied carbon is taking 1 kilogram of dirt to go from the site to when it becomes our brick or into our rammed earth. Understanding like all of the materials and how they help us achieve the target of reducing our embodied carbon by half. So this is our building system that we're trying to challenge and change as much as we can so we can hit the 58% reduction in embodied carbon in comparison to business as usual as we would build any building in the house. This is the Clesor team that has made our rammed earth. This is their Instagram page. Now we monitor it to see who else they've built rammed earth for. You can see in the photos, only one is our project. So all the others, we had nothing to do with it. But we're happy that people are embracing this technology. And beyond that, all of that work that we've done then went on to inform standards and guidelines of building with earth, with adobe blocks that are started with. Because in the city of Kigali, it was forbidden to build with adobe blocks. We asked the regulators why. They said it's because they don't know how to regulate it. Concrete and bricks and everything else, they have the codes, but for earth construction, they didn't have anything. And therefore, they told the population they cannot build with it. So we're like, what if we could use all of that data we have procured ourselves during this project to help you create these standards? This is what we did, and I think 2 years after the project finished, they allowed people to build with adobe blocks in the city currently, in Kigali. In addition to that, we also have training guidelines. So the government committed to train masons across the country in many of those things that I was talking about, like how do you test blocks when you don't have a lab to make the compression? What are the early things you can look for that will allow you to know whether the bricks that they made for you are good or not? And all of that is part of the training manual. And also, like, you know, how do you build it? You know, if they go to regulate it, what should they look for in telling the masons that they need to do or not? Timber. We don't manufacture steel in the country. Everything we build with steel is imported from outside. And we are a landlocked country. So either you go through Dar es Salaam or Mombasa to put on a truck to come to Rwanda. So part of our goal was to figure out, like, can we build with what is within the vicinity that we wanted? We found out that there was already a logging industry which was started in the country, but they were doing it for electric poles. like for the utility companies, you know those electric poles they put by the roadside. But we went to challenge them. We say, you know, people have been building with timber in the rural areas. Their processes are slow and tedious and labor intensive, but they do it. So why can't we tweak a little bit of your processes and see if we can come up with systems that we can use? But all of that was plagued with, again, understanding like what type of trees do they log? Is it good for construction? So the same cycle we did for earth, we also did it for timber. We went to look for which species exists, where, which ones are native, which ones are exotic, but are not really part of our natural ecosystems. Pinus is indigenous to Rwanda. Eucalyptus is exotic, it was imported. It's a horrible plant, but it grows very fast, so it's preferred. We wanted to understand what the timber is being used for at that time, so that we can understand where to plug it in or where it doesn't fit. The economics behind it, why it doesn't get used, how it gets processed, in what sizes, how it gets dried up, so we can understand the limitations. So this is the drying kiln they had, which was only like 4.1 meters wide, timber logs. Therefore, all our structure systems could not exceed that length because we could not get anything longer that is dried up well. That's how like all the trusses were. Do you remember those roofs that looked like that? Like that's a result of being limited to that type of truss, actually, because we couldn't do anything else. Each member, how it should be done, testing, making sure it's properly dried, but also understanding which ones can be structurally sound and not. Resistance tests over time, which ones are prone to warp later on, just like having drums filled with sand, testing a log there, so we can map out like all our results. Grading, how are we going to pick all of this, because these processes of logging and timber processing are not set up for construction timber. So we had to do that job ourselves. All they said, we're going to give you timber, and then you figure that out yourselves. So we need to understand, you know, how are we going to pick these elements, see which ones we use for structural elements, which ones we use for non-structural elements, and which one we use for other things like furniture and things like that. So this is what this entire system is. And you had people like go to each piece of timber they got delivered on site to look for all of these sort of things and sort them out with colors. This is what these guys are doing. And we wanted to, of course, to make sure that contractors feel protected, that we're not going to just reject all the timbers that they bring on site and they're going to lose money. So we figured out a system of making sure that what we don't use for construction, we use it for other things like furniture or floors or, you know, you name it. So this is what like a tracking system would be, what we're using for timber, priority number 1, priority number 2, all of this sort of things, like it would be complex spreadsheets. It's a couple of photos of construction and how everything came together. This is the second year housing. This is clay. It's the last material I'm going to use. Again, we have a factory that makes bricks. We went to visit. We're not happy with one of the things that they were doing because we wanted to create our own, but we understood like, you know, what they were doing and how the process is. And we designed a tile that matched our ambitions. That's my colleague Anton holding it. And a tile was based on their manufacturing capacity, their equipment, and things we knew they could do. So you can see this is the standard brick that they produce, but they agreed to put our tiles up there, if you can see at the top. So we figured out like how we can make them there. It's just a simple process. We have like extrusion of these clay elements put on a bed. It goes through a firing oven, and then at the end of it you have bricks and tiles. It's very, very simple and straightforward. So really the tweak was small. and we were happy they agreed to do it. But we also like mixed in like normal tile that they were already producing to make sure we meet our quota because we're designing many buildings. That's our store and inventory on site, installation, and what the finished products look like when the roof coverings are on. Again, the environmental product declaration for this material was not there, but we learned a lot of things. For instance, because of environmental laws in the country, they were no longer firing their bricks using wood and timber. They were using coffee husks. If you don't know, in Rwanda, we produce some of the best coffee in the world. So, you know, all of the byproduct of that coffee we figured could become fuel for firing these type of things. So we went and mapped out the entire processes for where we get clay all the way to like when we get our tiles and everything else, and all the inputs that goes through, as well as their embodied carbon and operational carbon, to understand what is our product at the end of it when I hold the tile, how much carbon does it carry. Similarly, we wanted to understand like timber, how can you accept everything? So Welas is a master craft in glazed tile. His normal business is to make plates, and those cups you see that are made from glazed clay. But we thought we could tap into his experience and make glazed tiles for bathrooms as well. So he made a lot of this on a big commission on our project. Beyond that, these are some samples of craft people and makers from all over the country that we worked with to make furniture and fixtures of things that went into our project. The reason for that is because if you remember that image that I showed about agricultural processes and fruit of the land fueling the construction, we wanted to celebrate this act that the campus, the institution that is tasked to make this land productive, can also make the architecture possible. And our push was to get this done as much as we could. Everything all the way to the door handles. We're imagining issues about accessibility, you know, forms that are inspired by national iconography and that can allow each handle to be different so that someone who's visually impaired can easily know which cabinet they are touching or not. These are decisions that architects and designers, we can make, but that will make many people's lives easier if only we're intentional about what we want them to do. Tested everything, understanding what palm, fibers that we have existing in our country and what we could do with them, rather than importing things from China or Turkey or whatever. Who we work with, most of these cooperatives of women are very popular in Rwanda because they make these baskets that became famous in Rwanda because they also played a role in reconciliation. If you don't know anything about Rwanda, you can Google peace baskets, then you can read the entire story. They are sold in the US for a lot of money. But like, these people are good at their crafts, but they're limited to making these small items that they sell for $50, $100. When this is a project of $75 million, imagine the commission that can come out of that and how many economic development it can support. Creating aesthetics that are inspired by Rwanda, that are Rwandan, that are not found anywhere else in the world, that we can claim of our own, that we can say this place looks like this because it's in Rwanda, not because it's in China, because it's in Turkey. And it's beautiful. It's not associated with being backwards, and we built with materials that we found on site and everything else. Some of the images of what that looks like. Also learning from people. For instance, we learned that this gray color you see on this table is a result of vinegar acting with the resin in eucalyptus, produces this beautiful, natural, gray color. And the table smells like salad. It's fantastic. It's the best thing. So in total, this campus was built on around 1,600 hectares, 16,000 hectares of land, a total of 69 buildings, and about like $500,000 of jobs that went around in about it. And I'm going to end on this slide talking about this project. In our calculations, because of all these things that we've done, regenerative landscapes, reducing the embodied carbon and everything else, we estimated that by 2040, this campus will be carbon negative, or climate positive, if you will. What that means is, all the carbon that we've invested in building this campus and operating it